Big changes happening over here at Renegade. I know many of you have been following our journey, and with more than 400 graduates across 15 countries, we have learned a thing or two, and we are listening loudly. As we've grown, expanded, and evolved, what we've learned is that this container, this curriculum and content, the community and collaboration and the accountability, it's much bigger than an 8-week intensive accelerator. So we are now an annual experience. It's ongoing, and you don't have to wait until spring or fall to join us. We are accepting applications and nominations right now. And we're enrolling and onboarding new women every single week. We are enrolling female leaders, executives, and founders from all over, across all different industries. We are industry agnostic intentionally, and these are like-minded, like-hearted women who are fiercely loyal to each other's results and success. So you can get an unfair advantage to 2023 and get a jump start now. You can learn more at renegade.global. We'd love to explore this with you. Just apply today and we'll be in touch.
Who the heck are you and how can you contribute in the world is informed massively by identifying in detail that which you love.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Marcus Buckingham is on the show today. He is a new friend of mine. He is an author of 2 of the best-selling business books of all time. He studies people for a living, and he is legit. His new book called Love and Work is something else. So I met Marcus in May of this year, and he actually was keynoting at the same conference I was, and I stuck around to listen to his and pretty much made myself late to the airport because I was so captivated by his message and by his research around love and work. And one of the key things that he said that just kind of blew my mind was that your brain on love is smarter. So he's basically saying we are smarter when we are in love. When we're in love with what we're doing, when we're in love with our environment, what's around us, just love, period. And he talks through ways to identify what is it that you love about your days, your work, your life. How do you identify what you love, especially as it relates to work? And it turns out love is pretty good for the bottom line. We also talk through the consequences of when love is repressed, whether that's in the workplace or in life, but specifically, if you don't love what you do, that is not a good thing. That's not a good thing for your health, physiologically, obviously emotionally. It's not good for the people around you. And it's really interesting to think about how this is all very connected. What I love about Marcus is that he brings research into everything he does. And the storytelling is top notch. He has the best stories, super fun to listen to, and very fascinating to learn from. Without further ado, here is Marcus Buckingham. Okay, at the top of the show, you heard me talk a little bit about the changes we're making to Renegade. What I also wanted to share was a little bit more on what we're focused on, the education and the topics. We are focused on your personal brand. We're focused on public speaking, innovative mindset, leadership, and wealth creation. We offer exclusive access to deal flow and investment opportunities through Renegade Global Ventures. This is a new thing over the last year that has just been incredible for the women in the network. So we are seeing a lot of brand new angel investors, first time ever that they're writing checks, because they're able to get access to opportunities they would never have otherwise. And we bring those to the Renegades along with education. So we're really democratizing access to deal flow as well as the flow of capital, and going and pooling our money together and sticking ourselves on those capitalization tables. So that means these women have equity. They have ownership in the companies that they're investing in. And we're doing this together. Over the last 3 months, we've invested more than $1.2 million. And we are literally vetting deals and providing opportunities every day. If this sounds interesting to you, head to renegade.global and apply. We'll be in touch. Marcus, welcome to the Why Not Now show. Thank you for joining me. And in the spirit of Why Not Now, let's start as we usually do. Can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you had to ask yourself, why not now?
Well, probably I have two of them. Well, three of them probably. But I was 17 years with the Gallup organization when I joined my career. I mean, when I first started my career, I joined right out of college, and 17 years later. And I'd written 2 books, first Break All the Rules and Now Discover Your Strengths. We'd created something called Strength Finder. Everything was going swimmingly. And I really liked being a researcher. I mean, that's what I do. I'm a psychometrician. So this is what Gallup was doing, is measuring things about people that are really hard to measure. Talent, strengths, engagement, stress, resilience, inclusion, all those things. And I loved the person that I reported to, who was the chairman of Gallup, Dr. Don Clifton, who's considered to be the grandfather of positive psychology. And I was so lucky to work with him. And then he tragically died. And I realized that moment that we all sort of realized, which is the company isn't who you work for. You work for the individual. You work for the sun, the moon, and the stars of your life at work is the person and the team that you work around. And when that changes materially, then you realize that you're in a different world. It doesn't look like you're in a different world because your business card still said the same. We had business cards back then. But it's like, oh, this isn't me. And so my why not now is I had to leave somewhere I'd been for 17 years and start off from scratch. But as someone said to me at the time, if you're not going to bet on yourself, then why did you get out of bed? And so it was a bet on myself moment. And then weirdly, the other one that comes to mind, I built a company. I started off as a training and development company for managers. And then, because as we've all discovered, in the end, sort of training is trumped by tools. Tools trump training. And if you're teaching managers how to get the best out of their teams and how to figure out the uniqueness of people, but all the tools that they use, all the human resources, performance management, goal-setting tools are antithetical to that idea, which they are, then you have to start building different tools, because otherwise all of your training and your learning runs sort of like a buzzsaw right into remedial, homogeneous rating systems, MBO performance systems that just no really good team leader uses. So we set out to build a set of tools that team leaders would actually want to use to figure out how to get the best out of the people on their team. And then weirdly, as you've probably found in your career, me, Joe, that somehow you get clients you don't deserve. So my biggest client was Cisco, 177,000 people in sort of 39 countries. And I had 100 people, which sounds big, but really isn't when you're trying to serve Cisco, Accenture, Deloitte, Facebook was my biggest client. And you're like, and I didn't love it in the end, actually. And so there was a why not now moment. Was ADP out of the blue, the payroll processing company, came and said, we want to buy you because we want to take this and scale it. You've built a company from scratch, which is great. You built a tech stack that we can industrialize, and we want to scale it. And so for me at that point, it was the other way. It was like going, right now I want to bet on scale. And those two moments when you asked that question, why not now? It was like, now was the time to leave Gallup because I lost on. And then now, which is 2017, actually, now is the time to scale, because now is the time to scale. So those are the two that come to mind for me.
Amazing. And it's always interesting because sometimes it's why not now stop something or change, right? Versus start. And that trade-off is always going to be in the equation. But it seems to me like, you've written some of the best business books of all time, the best selling, and you're known for, psychometrics. How do you say it? What are you? I have it written down here.
It's psychometrics. So it's measuring personality or measuring a state of mind, a mood. How do you measure engagement, employee engagement? Or how do you measure resilience? How do you measure people's strengths and talents? That's a psychometrics.
So you've got that hat on, and obviously that career collateral has built to everything that you are today. But this new body of work and this new angle and your new book, Love and Work, it sounds like it was a bit of a departure for you in terms of, and probably a very natural evolution / departure. But I was fortunate to hear you talk about this new area when we both spoke at Women's Presidents Organization. And I remember being late to the airport, but I would not leave because I was taking so many notes. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how this is different, because I mean, you've written a lot of books, you've become a master in your area, and this, I can just see how lit up you are about the kind of the novelty of this uncovering. And there's so much here that we'll grasp from you. We'll get as much as we can out of you today. But we've started to implement some of your techniques on our team and I'll talk about it in a little bit, but it's a whole different way to operate. So yeah, fill us in on how this came to be, this new Love and Work, and just focusing on love.
Like everybody, I had some really tough days during the pandemic. I lost my dad, I lost my cousin. And you have moments where you look in the mirror and you go, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? What sort of a difference are you making? And it can be lonely and it can be challenging. And then you have other days where you wake up and look in the mirror and you go, I'm only here for a short time. I'm going to try to make as much of a difference as I possibly can make, and it's a challenging moment when that happens, but you go, no, I'm absolutely going to come out of this and not waste a moment. And so this book was a product of that, going, if I die before this book is written, I'll be really ticked off with myself while I'm dead. Because we live in a world where we know from science, we know that by the time you're 19, you have 100 billion synaptic connections in your brain. We know the uniqueness of those synaptic connections produce in you a really unique pattern of very specific things that you love and very specific moments that light you up and very specific situations that lift you up. And on the flip side, other moments and situations and contexts that are really specific to you, but that drain you or that bore you or that you lean out from. We know this, even if we have, a brother or a sister in our own family, we turn to them and we think, well, I was born and raised in the same household, same genes, but I'm really different from the people who genetically I'm closest to and socioeconomically I'm closest to. I laugh at different things. I find joy in different things. I find certain things easy that my brother or sister or cousin finds difficult. And we know that, we all instinctively know that we've got something really distinct and unique about us. And yet, faced with that 100 billion synaptic connections, no one really helps us make sense of that. We don't get, I think the example I used in the presentation in Montreal was my daughter coming up to me and saying, what's the difference between a rhombus and a parallelogram? She was 16 at the time. And you realize somebody said, geometry is very, very, very important. Your daughter will get 10 years of geometry. It's important. And it is important. But you realize as a dad, no one's going to help her decode those 100 billion synaptic connections. No one is going to help her figure out how to use life to identify the particular things that she loves, that particular set of synaptic connection roots or patterns in her brain, and then turn them into contribution. There's no language on that. She'll get nothing on that, nothing. No one will. Our entire school days and our college days and a lot of our work days are actually spent basically under the assumption that there's nothing inside your head. There's nothing unique in there. And what is in there, by the way, we could totally change. And we couch it around a growth mindset, which is okay. We should tell people they can grow. But that sort of flies against the idea that there's also some really interesting stuff inside you already. And there's unique patterns inside you already. And the course of your life isn't rewiring your brain to become someone else. It's actually figuring out what those patterns are and then contributing them intelligently and morally. And when you realize as a parent that nobody's going to help your kid do any of that, they're just going to give them Adderall and Xanax and Wellbutrin or whatever other anxiety reducing drugs we can throw at them, then you realize, okay, I got to write a book about love, because the decoder in the end, Amy Jo, it's the weirdest thing, but we do all speak our own love language fluently, by which I mean we can identify the particular moments or situations or contexts that we love. We can. At 9, I think the example I gave was you asked 10,000 9-year-olds, when was the last time an afternoon flew by? They all have the right answer. And it's a different answer. Every kid has a different answer, but they don't go, I need to call mom, or I need to call my teacher to find out the right answer to that question. No. So from 9 years old, we're pretty close to our own loves. And then we sort of, from that moment on, as the teenage years come around, we systematically alienate ourselves from ourselves. And so you get further and further and further removed from that which you love. But the book is really an emotional and I think rigorous appeal to rehabilitate love as a decoder for you. Who the heck are you? And how can you contribute in the world is informed massively by identifying in detail that which you love, which doesn't mean find a job you love and then you'll never have to work a day in your life. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean find your calling necessarily. Those things are really broad and sort of intimidating. Find one job I love, like, wow. Instead, as the data show, it really just means find the love in what you do. Find the love in this day. Change your relationship to today, because today, this day, is actually filled with thousands of different situations and moments and contexts and encounters. And my analogy is that these are threads. Every day's got 1,000 threads in it. It's a fabric. And some are emotionally neutral, a little, black, white, green, gray, whatever, but some are red. And so the analogy that I would love to give to my daughter for the rest of her life is like, hey, Lilia, there are red threads every day to be found that are unique to you, and other people are colorblind to yours. Sorry, but they are. And so, long answer to a short question, Amy Jo, but if I didn't write this book, I know there's no curriculum in schools around it. And yet I also know it's deeply, deeply human and deeply true. And we don't teach anyone how to do it. And it's a shame.
And one of the things you said, every day should be a scavenger hunt for love and for those red threads. Yeah. And I love that, because getting curious, and you ask so many adults, what do you love? And they're just like, they do need to go call someone. Oh, I don't know. I need to find, some of your tactics for finding that are so useful. And one of the things you talk about is making a list of what you loathe, right?
Yes. And it's, first of all, you're right. And I know this from data. It's not like I think. It's when you ask people, when you ask an adult, what do you love? By far the most common answer. When I was at Gallup, first 10 years at Gallup was doing pre-employment selection interviews. So one of the questions was, what did you love about that job? Whatever the job was that you were in, what did you love about it? And the most common answer was, I love working with people, which is not a bad answer. It's just a vague answer, because you want to go, which people? What are you doing? Give me a verb. How about we start with a verb? What are you doing with the people? Saving them? Inspiring them? Challenging them? Selling to them? Like what? The second most common answer, Amy Jo, is I love challenge. Okay. What sort of challenge where you know you're going to win? Challenge where you don't know you're going to win? Challenge, like, just be specific. But we get very, very vague in terms of our own loves as we grow up. We get vaguer as we get older through college and into work. So yeah, the simplest way to figure out sort of, well, what do I love, is the three biggest clues are, number one, before you do it, you find yourself looking forward to it. It's called positive anticipation. Number two, while you're doing it, time flies by. So it's what Mike Csikszentmihalyi called flow, but you might experience it as time just goes by quickly and you vanish into the moment. It's one of the ironies of life that you find yourself when you vanish. It's weird. But when you and the activity become one, you're not doing the activity, you are it. And then when you're done with it, you feel invigorated, not drained. Not thank God that's over, but like there's something invigorating about it. There are other clues, but those are the three big ones. And so, as you said, one of the best things to do to pinpoint what you love is take that blank pad around with you for a week, draw the line down the middle of it, write loathed it at the top of one column and loved it at the top of the other column, take it around with you for a week, look for those three signs, or the inverse. So no positive anticipation. You keep pushing it off and procrastinate. Or when you're doing it, time drags on, like really sludging through it. And then when you're done with it, you're drained. You're psychologically, which, we have to do. There's research that suggests that we might have to do 40, 50, 60% of low. But you need to know what those are. And obviously the most important thing, you need to know what on the other side, just use a regular day or a regular week to identify the particular activities that you love. It's so weird, least specific. And it's right there for you. Like it's right there for you if you were to look.
So this is a great place for me to share that we have at Team Renegade, any one-on-ones that we have with our teammates, we ask 4 questions, and these came from you. What did you love about last week? What did you loathe? What's hot and how I can help you? Hopefully those are the right 4, but those are the ones we've been using. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's been working. And it's quick. It's not like, let's do a therapy session for 2 hours. It's just like rattle it off. You know what the questions are. And it's so helpful because as leaders and or coworkers and, across every, in the entire ecosystem, we can start to dial in where we can feed each other more things that we love to do, right? That may not be on a silly job description that, especially in small companies, it's like people giggle at job descriptions, right? It's like as a startup, you're like, yeah, that's cute.
Right.
You're going to do everything, right? But it's, I think that's where I was typing an email today. I shared something on Instagram stories about this where I have a corporate client and I said, I love you at the end. And I was like, whoa, can I send this across corporate lines? Like, is this allowed? Is there some firewall that's going to catch this? And I do. She's a renegade and she happens to be a client too. And I was thinking about, like, why don't we bring love more into the workplace like that? Just in general, the concept. And one of the things you said that I've been thinking a lot about is like, if you have love in one area of life, like have you ever worked with someone and they have found love, romantic love in their life, and all of a sudden their work got better, they're more crystal clear, they're just a different human to be around, and their skills probably are sharper. And it's like, whoa, what happened to you? Do you feel love is transferable across all these facets of the pie of our lives?
Well, it's not really what But by the way, those questions are the right questions and what you're doing there. So for anyone who's a leader, you just have to remember 25 years of research into studying high-performing teams. And people go, what's the secret to building high-performing teams? What's the secret? Attention, 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 attention. Frequent light touch attention. That's what those 4 questions do, by the way. You go through a year and the goals you set at the beginning of the year are irrelevant by the 3rd week of January. So the best leaders know the only solution to engaging with frequent change, which is what life is frequent attention. So that's what you're doing with people there. It's one of the big misses of leadership. We've overcomplicated the living daylights out of it. Leadership is frequent attention between the person and the work, which if you think about those 4 questions, it's 2 questions about last week, 2 questions about this week. Love and work, in a sense. What do you love? And then what are you working on? How can I help? What do you love? What are you working on? That's kind of 52 weeks. I'm not saying you have to use those questions every time, but it's like, oh my word, that's frequent attention. And that's what the best coaches do when you look at sports coaches. It's not once a year, the most amazing coaching session. It's every week. But to your question, we do actually know that when you are in love with someone, your brain chemistry changes. You have elevated levels of certain neurotransmitters, oxytocin, which is sometimes called the love drug, but also serotonin, norepinephrine. And then when you're doing activities that you love, we see the same elevated levels of neurotransmitters with the added one of anandamide, which apparently brings you feelings of wonder and awe. So you put that little chemical cocktail together when you're in love with someone, and what it seems to be doing when you're in love with another human is it, in a sense, breaks some of your barriers down that are egoic. What they say is it dysregulates your neocortex. It dysregulates your flight or fight, focus, get it doneness. And it opens you up to more information, more safety, more intimacy when you're in love with someone, of course, right? More trust. Well, when you're doing work and you're doing activities like that, the same thing happens. It opens your mind up to more inputs, more innovation, more collaboration, more willingness to step into ambiguity. Like, your brain on love is smarter. So that's why I actually picked HBR as my publisher, Harvard Business Review, because it's like, to your point, Amy Jo, it's like, let's rehabilitate the word love. Because you study excellence, loveless excellence is an oxymoron. Loveless creativity, oxymoron. Loveless entrepreneurship, oxymoron. Like, loveless innovation doesn't have, like, loveless service. Wherever you see excellence in any of those things, there's love in it. Maybe not every moment of it. In fact, there isn't every moment of it, but there's love in anyone doing anything at excellence. And if we don't use that word love, if we find a euphemism for it, then we're making it less authentically human. Because when you wrote to your friend today, I love you, that's a human thing. When we're born, the very first thing we hunt for isn't food, is it? It's love. It's the first thing we start hunting for, scavenging for. So what, we stop that at work? Why? I know there are others right now, good old Adam Grant going, well, you shouldn't think of your work as a family. And others saying you shouldn't expect too much from work. You should quit or whatever. But actually, if you work for a bad place, you shouldn't think of it. But if you want work to be a place that sees you and has an opportunity for you to encounter yourself at your best, just to know yourself at your best, I'm sorry, you can't even begin to describe that without using the word love. But actually, it's more powerful than that, because love, that which you love, is a prescription. It leads you to do more of some things and less of others. Not selfishly, right? But because that's where you contribute more. Your brain on love is smarter. So as you said, in a startup, I've built a startup, you have too. It's like, yeah, there's no job descriptions, but if you're blind to that which people love, then you will be pushing noodles uphill all the time.
It's damn good for the bottom line, right? To get people in areas that they love. Like, it's the only way to go to be successful. I think of, I don't know, this just popped into mind, but the romanticism around entrepreneurship and a lot of the struggle and even mental health challenges around that, not to mention all the others. But when people are obsessive about building something they don't love, that's just a cocktail for drama right there, right? The amount of pressure, if you don't choose something that you love, this isn't going to end well. It's not a great formula. But you see people doing that because they think it'll make some money, right? I'll do this first, and then when I get my payday or when I get to then I'll do what I love. It's like, no,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, well, let me first check these boxes and get secure, and it's flip that around. I love that.
It's a terrible trade. That's a terrible trade, isn't it? Because you're like, what we know about psychology, human psychology, is that we do need constant feeding. Saying you got to find love in work doesn't mean, well, you have sort of 28 days of lovelessness, but then one really love-filled day. Or as you were saying, well, I'll do this for 4 years. I'll stay in the corporate world for 4 more years, earn a bunch of dough, and then I'll quit and do it's like, I'm sorry, if in those 4 years, you really do have, if you do the love it, loathe it activity, let's say, and you find there's really nothing on the loved it's, you're just coming to work. You're just going through the motions. Please don't imagine that's neutral. That's not neutral. You are being psychologically depleted. We breathe on love. And so you're basically holding your breath for 4 years, if that's the trade you've made. And the people you hurt are the people you love. You are hurting the people you love. You go home and you are empty, and they know it and you know it. You might not be able to express it, but this isn't a nice to have. This is part of the human condition. You need to have days that have red threads in them. You need it. And so for entrepreneurs, it's even true of, for me, I start a business. Yes, I have to love the business. You're absolutely right. I got to kind of love the what are we doing? But my days better be filled with activities that I love. Otherwise, I won't be very good. And I won't be able to be sustaining it anyway. I'm not nourished by it. And one of the challenges of entrepreneurship, of course, is you start a business and you end up doing a whole bunch of stuff every single day that you feel you have to do, but that drains you or bores you. And you think, well, I'm doing it to sacrifice for building the business. But in the end, that's again a bad trade, because if you are emptying yourself out by the fact that you haven't figured out what it is that you love as being an entrepreneur, and you haven't surrounded yourself with a couple of people that seem to get a kick out of things that you don't, then you're not serving the business at all. You're just emptying yourself out. I mean, I don't love solving problems. Anytime someone brings a problem to me, I'm not energized. I'm depleted by it. So I'll avoid them. And if I wasn't careful, I would have had a life as an entrepreneur where I was just, because you know this, you deal with problems all the time as an entrepreneur. And it seems almost antithetical. You could be an entrepreneur without wanting to kind of dive into problems and make a decision. Well, I hate that. Luckily, I had a whole mindset around this. People out there, when you bring them a problem, their little heart skips a beat with joy. Like, bring me another one, bring me another one. But many entrepreneurs don't know themselves well enough to know that the glamour of entrepreneurship is also the fact that it appears uniform. And you have to do everything, and that's the image of the entrepreneur, like almost the Elon Musk-y entrepreneur, doing everything. And if that's what you think of as entrepreneurship, you just won't last very long, and you won't be very good. So being pretty darn specific about what are your particular red threads as an entrepreneur, which bits of it lift you up. Figure that out, because if you don't, we won't know, and then we'll wonder why you're burned up.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us. One of the examples you give, which just totally nails this, and it goes to show our entire society, and from a young age, we just instill this mentality of, your child brings home a report card and you got all A's and a D or an F. And it's like, where is that attention going? It's going straight to the F, right? Screw the A's. Like, yeah, that's table stakes. We need to focus on this F. And I have a mentor who always says, why would you take the things that you're just okay with and try and make them better when we could take what you're really good at and make sure they're your superpowers? And that is just so human nature to focus on, let's go fix this. It's like, what if that's not a problem right now?
Well, what you just said is so huge. Like, first of all, to your friend's point, if you, like, human beings can grow. Like, all of Carol Dweck's work is, we absolutely have to think about Carol Dweck wrote the growth mindset. We can all grow and get better. But with some things, frankly, and we know this in terms of the way that the brain is wired, you grow more synaptic connections most easily. In those parts of your brain, you have the most pre-existing synaptic connections. And we also know why that is, because you've got the biological infrastructure to enable you to more easily grow more, where you already have more alpha integrin proteins, more blood vessels. That's just how nature does it. Like, she follows the path of least resistance. So that means you learn most where the A's are. That's just biologically true. That doesn't mean you should ignore the F, right? Or the metaphorical F, whatever your weakness is. Like, go from an F to a C. Abso-flippin'-lutely. I got kids, like, F's are bad. But there are clearly some things with you. Like, if I was your coach, I could find some F's and I could say to you, look, you need to work like crazy on those. And unfortunately, in the world of work, we even call those areas of opportunity. We have a euphemism for them, right? Yeah, areas of opportunity. But frankly, we know biologically, you'll go from an F to a C. You'll go from bad to average, or bad to below average. Well, if that's your approach to kind of winning in life, then you won't. So your friend's advice isn't just kind of good advice from a friend, metaphorically. It's super pragmatic advice in terms of how do you differentiate yourself. Peter Drucker said this about companies, didn't he? Small companies and big. You get your strengths together, you make your weaknesses irrelevant. Okay, that's huge for any entrepreneur. You get your strengths together and make your weaknesses irrelevant. Now, he was talking about companies, but it's germane to individuals. Like, where do you have some sort of competitive advantage over everybody else? Do you know it? And then have you taken it seriously? It's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't respond to the why not now with okay now, because they're so close to their own A's. They don't see them as A's anymore. And they've been inculcated into a society which tells them A's, forget about it. Now, let's really work on the areas of opportunity. And as a result, you've got a lot of people who don't make that step into entrepreneurship, into renegadeness, because they have, deeply endemic imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome isn't, we don't really think about other people are, saying that turn on all the lights, they would discover that we're not actually as good as we think we are or pretending to be. But actually, the person that you're an imposter from, that's an internal monologue. That's like you going, I don't really know me anymore. I don't know my A's. I don't know my powers, so I can't cultivate them into a superpower. So one of the most powerful things for any renegade to do or any entrepreneur to do would be to go, wait a minute, what are my A's? And I don't mean that I'm good at them, but I have appetite. They nourish me. I love doing this and this and this. Like no one knows that but you. And for you to go, well, doesn't everyone? No. That's one of the most important lessons from the book in Love and Work is like, no one's like you. You're freaking weird. And you don't even know you're weird because it feels like breathing to you that you would talk to people this way or remember so many people's names or reach out in just that sort of tone and voice or just that tone in the email to get people to have goodwill towards you that you think, well, doesn't everyone? No, that whole email and the reason you even wrote it and your reaction to what came back is completely and utterly uniquely you. And it's super freaking cool. It doesn't mean that you don't work at getting better and using that particular love to make something happen. But it does mean that the A's that you have are known for you alone and have to be the place that you start when you're thinking about building your own superpower. And yet, as you said, we don't. I mean, we do the opposite. We don't even do something slightly different. All the way through school, all the way through college, all the way through work, 5 minutes on the A's, 50 minutes on the F's.
This is just, you're basically rebranding love in a way. And what's more important than that? I mean, this is so freaking cool. So I was thinking about my time in the NICU with my son. We spent 3 months in the NICU. He's born micro-preemie, almost on an airplane. Crazy story. We got to know those NICU nurses and docs really well. And I asked our head neonatologist one day, we've got this little 2-pounder and saying, what do we do when we take him home? I'm like freaked out thinking I've got a team of badasses who are talk about red threads that know what they're doing. What in your experience, and he had many decades of experience, what makes a micro-preemie thrive in their environment versus, maybe not that you've seen? And I'm thinking he's going to talk about some sort of method or some sort of food or some sort of nurturing or who knows what. And he said love. He said if the household has love, it doesn't matter if they have much else. That kid is going to do really well. I've seen it over and over. And most ancient form of medicine is love. And so neonatologist is telling me this. And then I marry that with, wow, you look around any given day in those 90 days and there are more machines and data and technology, and the combination of those two things saved my son's life. And he's thriving. But it's so nice to have a science side of love.
It is a super powerful force, and it's the first human language. And there's 8 billion love languages. That's the other part of it. So you're squishing your son, and it's like cuddling. And we know, by the way, the famous John Bowlby experiments where you give a baby chimpanzee a wire mother with milk, and over here another wire frame of a chimp but covered in soft fur, and they go to the fur all the time. They don't go to the milk, because we humans from such an early age, I mean, we just lean into love. And yet also the specific activities that we love, just like the specific people that we love, the specific moments that we love, are very, very unique to us. But it's an incredibly powerful force all the way through our lives for learning, for connection, for resilience. Also, though, interestingly, like all human forces, or maybe even all forces of nature, it does demand expression. So if you're in a relationship, for example, and you're in a relationship with someone who either doesn't see what you love or sees what you love and is in competition with it somehow, then you can't, or even wishes you didn't love what you do love in terms of the specific red threads of your life, then it's funny, love repressed turns into a super caustic substance that eats you away from the inside out. And you find all sorts of ways of coping with that. You might have an affair. You might take up alcohol or drugs. You might take up really other unproductive sorts of behavior to mollify the fact that inside you're empty. But the irony is, what emptied you out is your love ate you away up from the inside. Love needs to be expressed, which is why even in the book, yes, it matters in business. You go work for a company and you don't have a chance to express that which you love, even if it's for 20, 30% of the time. If you don't, it's a terrible trade, because it burns you up from the inside that you can't express it. Same way in a relationship, though. I mean, this book is, my shell, my wife. It's shot through with, what's the point of a relationship? It's to make the other person bigger. That's what it is. Which in simple love terms means I see what you love and I want to help you turn it into contribution. There's no competition there, because love's an abundant resource. What you're into, what you are lifted up by, what you love, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't, there's no scarcity there. We just have to figure out the most beautiful way for you to contribute that. And my job in a relationship is to see. That's really the job of a relationship. I see you. It's the whole, like, you can't love what you can't see. I see you, I love you. I see you, I love you. And the funny thing about love is, if you're not seen and then you crush it or repress it for whatever good reasons, because you might want to stay together because you hate divorce or whatever, but that's psychologically, that doesn't work. It doesn't work psychologically, because you are being eaten away by the very thing that can be so life-giving when it's expressed.
Oh, that right there. I mean, that could be a whole next book, that topic. Yeah. Because the love repressed and the consequences of that versus kind of the inverse of what you said, the point of a relationship is to make the other person bigger. It's amplification. It is like, talk about 1 + 1 = 11. And it's an active, love is a verb, and it can be, and it's alive, right? It just seems like it's an active choice. And so I was thinking about, like, when did I start telling people I love them so much? Because I wasn't brought up in a household where we would say it a lot, even though there was a lot of love. We just didn't say I love you a lot. And I've never really said that to my friends. And it was Tony Shea, maybe a decade plus ago. He would always say, I love you. And I remember one of my first friends that would kind of say that, especially a dude. And I was like, yeah, why can't we say that, And it just became more natural for me. And why don't we tell people we love them more? Like, is that a fear thing? Or, and this is the last thing I'll say, and I'll let you respond. I've got 97 questions in one. Terrible interviewer. The other day, I was having lunch with my best friend, and we're talking, we consider each other soulmates. And she said, I didn't tell you this, but I forgot, but I wanted you to know that day I texted you, and I was walking into that board meeting, and like shit was hitting the fan, and it was going to be intense, and she was scared, and she was, but also juggling a million things with her young kids, and it was like she is tapped out. So she sent me this voice note, I think it was, And I didn't have a time to like respond in a really lengthy way, but I said, okay, Biz, it's her nickname. I need you to know I love you. And there's nothing we haven't been able to get through and figure out together before, ever. We're batting 1,000. I'll call you later. And then I don't even think we talked later, but eventually we did. But she said that was all she needed, right? That was it. And she started crying at lunch the other day saying, I don't know if you understand. That's all I needed. And I'm like, really? I vaguely remember sending it. I think I was at a stoplight. Anyway, I'm just kind of having this epiphany of, why don't we say I love you more to the people we love?
Well, because we are informed by Jean-Paul Sartre's idea that hell is other people. And hell is other people because they're not us and they have different desires and different intentions. And we might need to protect ourselves from them. And this is a dog-eat-dog world, man. And we got to just make sure that we are protected against our fellow man or woman, because they're just probably going to be out to get us. And we need to be safe. And so there's a very, very big desire, very natural human desire to be safe. And if you say that you love someone, then there's a part of you in them. And so they've got you. And that's scary. I don't want to do that. I'd rather just stay over here and say, I respect you. It's like those people who go, it's not important to be liked. It's important to be respected. No, it's not. You study all the data and people do more, work harder for, buy more from people that they like. And then if you take that one level up, it's when you have love. When you really have love, what that means is you have connection between two people who feel safe with one another. So the reason we don't say it is because we are being self-protective. And we worry that if we say it, the other person's going to abuse it. And of course, we're spiraling down versus spiraling up, because love, like trust, is one of those things where you get more of it by giving more of it away. And so the more you say to someone, I love you, what you're really saying is, I so see you. You are seen. So what you did with your friend, how beautiful is it in a world where you know that no one really knows you the way that you know you. No one really cares about you the way that you have to care about you. And there's so many burdens you carry as a mother or as a sister or as a friend. And you walk around every day going, this is heavy, man. I hope I don't crack. And in the face of that, where you're like, self-reliance, that's the only way I'm going to get through this. What you did is you went, hey, you're not alone. I see you. And sort of in an Avatar way, if you remember that movie, I see all of you. And I know you've been through, I'm not you, so I'm not going to do it the way that you would, but I see you and I love what I see. So when you go into that room, there's at least one person in the universe who's seen all that you are in all of your crazy, unique weirdness. And I love you for it. Now that's risky for you, because I don't know, you might imagine that she's going to turn around and take advantage of the love that you've given her, as though somehow you are now vulnerable. But actually what you're really, love doesn't, that's a weird computation, because it isn't. It's what you're doing is you are giving something to her that is incredibly uplifting for her. There is no risk for you, because you're just saying, I see you. I so see you. But this isn't joy and work. This isn't passion and work. Love is the word that we don't understand very well. Love is the word that we diminish. Love is the word that makes us feel soft, and the world is hard. And by the way, it has no place of work, because work is hard and love is soft. It's like, no, actually, false dichotomies. Love is often really hard work, but it's seeing another human for all that they are, and always looking for the best interpretation or the most generous explanation for why they do what they do. What a beautiful thing. I mean, that's the funny thing when we study love in relationships, is that people say, well, love is blind. And then after you're in a relationship, the scales fall away and you see who the person really is. Actually, all the research on love in healthy relationships shows that love stays blind. Love stays blind, which basically means, Amy Jo, that when you're in a really great love relationship, you know deeply that the other person will always be looking for the most generous explanation for why you do what you do, even if there are some other explanations which might actually be partially true for why you did what you did. The person who loves you is in a sense, and the psychologists who did the research, it came out of the University of Buffalo, they called these things positive delusions or benevolent distortions. In the best relationships, you're choosing in a love relationship to find the most generous explanation for why the other person does what they do, and you believe it. And what that does, of course, is it fuels the relationship, because it means you are always looking for the best reason for why someone did something. And then they know that that's the kind of seer that you are. You're not the detective. I mean, sometimes we are in relationships with people who consider themselves to be some sort of psychological detective, shining a light of like, why did you really do that? As though that's their job in our relationship, is to pinpoint the true, as though there is some true, selfish, perhaps, reason why you did something. God, it is exhausting to be in a relationship with a detective. Don't be in a relationship with a detective, because they'll probably find some stuff that's real. It's just not the full real. So what you did, such a beautiful thing with your friend, is you just went, I see you, and I will always be a person who holds and believes the best explanation for why you do what you do. That's love.
Well, and it compounds over time. That's what's so cool about it. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, abundance. Okay, I know we need to wrap up here. I could talk to you for hours and hours, Marcus. If we were to take you back to that moment where you open up, I'm just going to assume you're on a computer. You could be writing it down, but you're blank page, getting ready to write this book. And if you could just say something to yourself in that moment, is there anything that comes to mind that you would say?
Well, what I said to myself at the time is, I said, and this is true, I've written 10 books. And the first book started, and I know that you think about this a lot with the people that are renegades inside your community. How do you start? Why would you start? What's the way to start? And the way that you have to think about a book as an intimate experience. And so you have to have one reader in mind, not many readers. Not who's the book for, and it becomes like a psychographic or a demographic. No. You write the book to a person, to a person. So even though she's in it, I wrote this book to Michelle, who's my wife. My first book I wrote to Stephen Kendall, who was an individual manager, who was one of my oldest and dearest friends, who I was always on the phone with, like talking to him about like management. I'm like, I better write a book for Stephen, which means when you got Stephen in mind on every page, you're going into as much detail as Stephen would want. You're going into stories that Stephen would be. And you write a book for Stephen. But as one always says, you serve one, you serve many, you serve none. So if you write a book, it's like, who's the human you're writing to? And that's what, in my head, when I sat down to write the book, it was like, this is for Michelle. So what are we talking about? Why? Which examples? What tone? How much do I share? This book, Love and Work, is the most vulnerable I've ever been. This is not a Harvard Business Review article. There happens to be a Harvard Business Review article about it. But this is like, well, you've seen it, read it. It's like, it's a super emotional book. I've had a lot of weird stuff happen the last 4 years that I won't bore you with now, but it's like, oh my word, my kids were super exposed and harmed in ways that were like, what? By someone they loved. What? So the book is about some stuff I wouldn't ever otherwise share if I wasn't writing to Michelle. And by the way, the only other thing that sort of is in my mind right now is if people do want to, I mean, one of the things we decided, and she was a huge impetus on this, I built an assessment called Standout, which is like the next generation strength finder. But if people wanted a shortcut to finding what they love, during the pandemic, Michelle says, why don't we just give it away? If I see you, I love you. If you can't love what you can't see, during the pandemic particularly, but also afterwards, can we give people a language to talk about those things that they love, to talk about who they are? You can't love yourself if you can't see yourself. So we decided to give it away for free. We spent, tens of millions of dollars building this, but we've given it away for free as part of this whole Love and Work movement. And if people want to take it for free, if you go to marcusbuckingham.com, you'll see it says gift of Standout. And I wouldn't say it will tell you exactly what you love. Like that love it, loathe it thing, it gets you right into the nitty gritty of those red threads. But I would say that it takes you to the street corner because it measures you on 9 strengths rolls and then pinpoints your top 2. And it's like, those are the coordinates. And so as I was thinking about things to share on this podcast, like, we do have that research. If you want an accelerated way to dive into what you love, one of the first things that, as I was writing the book to Michelle, was thinking about her top 2 standout roles, which are different than mine. And whenever you're like, why did she say that? Sometimes having a language, a bit like Myers-Briggs, but like in this case, a very strengths-focused, love-focused language, you go, oh, she's not trying to be a jerk. She's trying to be herself, which means she comes at things in slightly different ways. So long answer to your short question, but all in my mind going back, it was like, I'm writing this for Michelle. Keep that in mind on every single page.
I love that so much. And we will link to that in the show notes below for those of you listening, just to the audio version and as well here on YouTube. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing the important work, for showing up and for enlightening us with this incredible point of view on love and work, and for spending your time with us. Thank you, Marcus.
Gosh, it's my pleasure. And if people want to stay in touch, probably the only social that I do really is Instagram. So there's so much here, like we spent 40 minutes here and we could have gone, I mean, this is a deep subject. So that's kind of where I try to just throw stuff out there. So if anyone's interested in that, please go there. And then from me to you, thank you for everything that you're doing. I think what you're doing is really, this is my own personal opinion, of course, but I think what you're doing is really important. It's really difficult. And yet it's bringing voices together who are wanting to make a dent in the world. And you're giving them is a way to have intelligence around that dent. Encouragement, yes, and community, yes, but also intelligence around the most effective way to do that. And from that comes expression of all these people that are part of the Renegade family. It's expression. These people are living their own life, first-rate version of their own life because of what you're doing. So from me to you, thank you for bothering to take that step when others might not have.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you. It's amazing how it's a team effort for sure. And it's fun to it's not just fun. It is the career love of my life, to bear witness to these renegades taking action in what they love. And so,
by the way, what a lovely phrase that is. Is what you're doing the love of your life? That's not a phrase you normally think of using in the context of, this is the career love of my life. That's lovely.
Thank you. I haven't always said that. It's a season, it's the last several years. And I can honestly say I've kind of dated a lot of frogs, a lot of work frogs. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your why not now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?